Okay, so let's get on with it. So the first thing we want to do is we want a new folder here for. Oh no, we don't want it under there. Let's just remove that. Delete this. We want a new folder here for game logic or logic, whatever you want to call it. So what we need is we need a new game instance. So if we look for game instance, there we go. So let's call this MenuFlow game instance. And that is going to be the custom game instance for our game, obviously. So what else do we need? We need an enum. So is there miscellaneous? I can't remember where the enums are. Blueprint enumeration. So we need enumeration because we want to have control over the state. So let's call it game state enum. So let's just quickly set those up. We want uninitialized. Well, actually, let's. Okay, should be all right. We want main menu. So this is the sort of enumeration for all of the states that we want. So we want main menu, we want loading, we want in-game, we want win, and we want lose. Now you could call these things anything you want as long as you remember which. So this is going to be the state that we're currently in. So when we're in the main menu state, we'll be showing the main menu. We go to the loading state when we're loading the next level. We, in the actual level itself, we'll go into the in-game state. And when we come up with a win condition, we'll go to the win state. That'll show the win information, and when we click OK on the win, we'll go back to the main menu state, or through the loading state as it happens. Okay, so that's we can save that. It's good. So we want to handle our game instance setups. So what we actually want is we want a custom event. So let's add a custom event and call this set state. And what that custom event is going to do is it's going to set whatever our desired state is going to be. But before that, we need to have a couple of variables. So yeah, 4.7 is a bit weird and it has the default section over here. So what we need to do is we need to have one of our custom enums, which is game state enum. That is, we'll call that old state, and then we'll do a new one and we'll call that new state, because we want to sort of know what we were in before and when we're setting it. So actually, let's not call that new state, let's call that game state. Yeah, basically that's the current state that we're in. So when we get this event, what it's going to do is going to set the state that we should be in. So it's going to be an enum of type game state, and it's going to be new state. So when we get this event, what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, so if our current game state is equal to our new game state, and then we want to do a not here, because if this is true then these two things are equal, but we want to see if it's not equal. Well, they're going to do an if so essentially we're going to say if our current state is not the same as the new state, then we want to set our old state to whatever we currently had for our current game state. We then want to call our current game state and set its value to the state that's being passed in. So basically we're saying store the current game state in old state and store the new state into our game state. And so what we're going to do then is we're going to call a custom event. So let's add another event here, an event dispatcher actually, and we're going to call that state changed. So what we want to do is we want to call state changed. Now the state changed event, this guy here, needs to have old state and new state. And so we're just going to pass those in from here. So essentially we're going to call an event dispatcher, and whoever is hooked up to this event dispatcher will then know what the new state is and what the old state was. Oop, yeah, I haven't actually put a state changed. No, that's right. Where did that go? Compile, no. Did I just... Okay, let's just delete that one and call state changed. Yeah, for some reason I think it when I did that call state changed, I hadn't already updated that. Strange, but there you go. Okay, so what will happen is that whenever we're let's just comment that, press C to comment something, handle state change and dispatch state change event. So once again, we've got this custom event that somebody else can call. It checks to see if we're actually changing the game state, because if we're not, we don't want to dispatch the event. It then saves the current game state in the old state and sets the game state to whatever we're being passed in as the new state. It then calls the state change event for the things that need to handle it. So anything can be hooked up to this state change event, and we'll receive notification when that changes. So if you think back to our plan, there was a couple of other things we needed to do. One is that we want to change level, and one is that we need to exit back to the main menu. So let's just add a couple of events here. Let's call this one, let's call it load game level. Now you don't have to do it this way, but I just figured it was as good a way as any. So back to main menu, whatever you want to call them. So what we're going to do with these is we're going to the first thing we probably want to do when we're loading the game is we want to set state, set the user interface state to loading. We then want to call open level, and with the name of our level, which we'll fill in a second. And again, with this one, we're pretty much going to do the same thing. State to loading, and then call open level, and this one will be our main menu level again. Yeah, so we might want to put a delay in here so that we see the actual loading screen before the open levels, but for now let's not worry too much about that. So we've got two events in the game instance so that we can call those events, and that will change the user interface and call the open level. Now there's one thing that we need to do here that we haven't done yet, and that is we need to store a user widget. So if we go to user widget reference, we want to call that loading UI. So when you when the game instance gets initialized, it gets this event called event init. So we need to create this loading UI when the event init happens. So let's create widget, and remember the class we've already got, which was loading menu, and then we're going to set that so we can use it in other functions here. So basically when the game instance gets initialized, it creates its own user interface widget for handling the loading screen. We might as well hook this up now. So when we've got a state change, we can say, okay, so let's grab hold of a copy of the game state. So the current game state, we can do a switch on that. Well, actually, no, we want to do two things really, don't we? So let's put a sequence in here. And let's we need two of these things. Okay, so we want to handle making the old state go away if we're changing from it, and we need to handle showing the new state if we're moving to it. So basically the old state is what we were, and the game state is what we are now. And you'll see this pattern through all of the menu system stuff that we're going to do now. So basically, first part is essentially if we have an old state and we're interested in it, so we're only interested in the loading state, we need to handle it going away. So in this case we need to say, okay, we need to remove from parent. So remember, we're only handling the loading in this game instance. So if the state that we've just come from, which is in this old state, is loading, then we need to remove it from parent. If the state that we're going to is loading, then we need to say add to viewport. So if we're going to the loading screen, essentially if the state is changed to the loading screen, we're adding it to the viewport. If it's changed from the loading screen, we're removing it from the viewport. So now if anything called set state loading, this game instance class will handle showing the right user interface for that. Yeah, so we're doing the loading thing, the loading UI in these two events that we're going to use on the game instance. Okay, so we've got the game instance class set up a little bit. We've got the different enumerations. So what we probably want to do is we want to go into our main menu and we want to hook up the actual changing to the game level. So let's click the button on here and then go on the clicked event, and what it's going to do is it's going to, well, let's first off we're going to call get game instance. So the get game instance is basically, because it's kind of always there, it's almost like a sort of global blueprint kind of thing. So we can get game instance, we can cast to our custom type of game instance, and we're saying if it did cast, then we want to call the set, we want to call the load, is it? I can't remember what I call it, load game level. Yeah, so basically when we say the play game button, we're going to call this function load game level on the game instance. And that's going to handle doing, you know, whatever we need for that. So what we should probably do is we should probably create an empty level for the main menu next. So let's go to maps and let's go to level. That's weird. And let's load, save selected. Why did new world not come up with that? That's very weird. Let's go back to the third person guy for now. Right, okay, let's rename that. Main menu level map. Let's call it map. It's weird they call them map. Yeah. I call them levels, they call them maps, whatever.